Welcome to the latest edition of the Out of the Mouth of Babes Bible series. As always, we coming to you with a lesson strictly out of the Bible. Today is the Sabbath day, and we are doing one lesson today, but it's pretty lengthy, so I'm going to try my best to get through it. As always, for those who don't know me, my name is Brother Brandon, and my reader is my son, Brandon Jr. Now, the title of today's lesson is The Powers That Be, God's Will Be Done. I repeat, the powers that be, God's will be done. And I came up with the idea to do this title because obviously, we are in the midst of an election week. And, I watch a lot of people, get up in arms about the election, who they're rooting for, who they decide to vote for, who they think should even be leading us. And, even though I'm interested in the election, I've watched quite a bit of it myself because I watch a lot of news. I understand that even though we are interested in some things that's going on in politics or going on in the world that we're forced to live in, we can't forget what God has going on. And what you learn from reading the Bible after studying the Bible for some time is the Lord has already given you the end game. So when you know the end game, everything in the middle is just details. So being that you know it's just details, you naturally respond to it a little differently. You naturally, look at it for what it is, and it's just another bump along the road to ultimately work out the plan that the Lord has set forth already. Because at the end of the day, no matter what anybody's doing, no matter what Biden does, no matter what Trump does, all that stuff is going to work together for the Lord's will to be done. So there's no need for people to fall out or have, big issues with one another because, they have a different preference of leadership in this country or any country for that being, because at the end of the day, the true king is God. He's the one pulling the strings behind the scenes, and he's the one that's ultimately is going to make everything work out the way he intends for it to work out. And we're not going to read about it, but I thought about putting in a lesson today. It's a story you can read, I believe, in Judges about a brother named Abimelech, and he's a prominent figure in Judges because he did something that we would believe to be somewhat unseemly. He killed about 70 of his brothers to take power. Well, by doing that, he brought, obviously, a bad prophecy on himself for doing so. And if you pay attention to the story, you realize that even though the Lord intended to do him harm, countless things went by or went past before that harm actually came. So knowing things like that, you know that there's going to be quite a few bumps on the road or hiccups along the way or changes of administration or whatever you may want to call it before the Lord's actual plan is worked out the way he wants it to be. We serve a God who is very complex. So things doesn't have to be, this happens and this automatically brings this. No, it's stages, it's levels to it. And once you understand that it's levels to it, you don't get caught up with any one of them. No level is worth you getting bent out of shape or stressed out because you know what the end game is. And the end game is the Lord is going to come take this world by force. And we know from the Bible, and as we're going to see today, who the players are going to be. So like I said again, the title of the lesson today is kind of lengthy, so I'm going to try to move pretty fast. If you have any questions, like I said, you can always contact us at outofthemouthofbabes712@gmail.com or simply leave a comment either under Facebook or under the YouTube channel once it's posted. But like I said again, the title of the lesson today is The Powers That Be, God's Will Be Done. And we're going to start today's lesson in John, the 5th chapter. John, the 5th chapter. And we're going to read a couple verses here. Figure this was a good place to start off because we have to always remember and understand that even though we don't see God, God has a lot going on. Even though we don't see it, behind the scenes, God has a lot going on. Not just in politics, not just in wars and conflicts, but even in our everyday lives, God has a lot going on, and he's working it out to the way he wants it to ultimately play out. So when you know that, there's no need to get bent out of shape about anything that's going on in the world today. But we're going to, like I said, we're going to start off in John, the 5th chapter. And when you get there, my son, start reading at verse 14. John 5 and 14. When you get there, go ahead.
Afterward, Jesus findeth him in the temple, and said unto him, Behold, thou art made whole, sin no more, lest the worst thing come unto thee.
Okay, so we're reading about a story about when Jesus healed a man on the Sabbath day. And Jesus let him know that even though he was healed, that he still had a responsibility. And that's something we all should remember. Even though God does something great in your life, or you feel like you've accepted God in your life, you still have a responsibility. And that's plainly seen by what Jesus told the brother. And he said, sin no more, lest the worst thing come unto thee. Keep going.
The man departed and told the Jews that it was Jesus which had made him whole. And therefore did the Jews persecute Jesus and sought to slay him, because he had done these things on the Sabbath day.
Mm-hmm.
But Jesus answered them, My Father worketh hitherto, and I work.
You see what Jesus responded as? He says, my Father. He's talking about God the Father in heaven. He says, my Father worketh hitherto, and I work. So when you understand that, you understand that God has a lot of things going on behind the scenes. He has a lot of different things playing out the way he wants them to play out, because he's working. Even though you don't see it, he's working his plan out to work out the way he intends it to be. But let's keep going. Let's go to Isaiah the 5th chapter. Isaiah the 5th chapter. Isaiah the 5th chapter. And we're going to read a couple verses here, starting at verse 11. Let me get that myself. I'm having trouble turning. Isaiah 5. And like I said, when you get there, start reading at verse 11. Isaiah 5 and verse 11. When you get there, go ahead.
Woe unto them that rise up early in the morning, that they may follow strong drink, then continue until night, till wine inflame them.
Mm-hmm.
And the harp and the viol, the tabret and pipe and wine are in their feasts, but they regard not the work of the Lord, neither consider the operations of his hand.
Okay, now this is a problem here. The prophet is letting you know that people, they're going to be going about their own lives. I know he used wine and strong drink as an analogy right here, because that can be a problem. You can be drunk with life, ultimately, but that can definitely be a problem if you are over in excess in alcoholic beverages and things like that. But the reason we came here, he said at verse 12, can you read that again?
And the harp and the viol, the tabret and pipe and wine are in their feasts, but they regard not the work of the Lord, neither consider the operation of his hands.
Neither consider the operation of his hands. They see the world as a whole. We kind of forget that God is, the one pulling the strings. We forget that God is the one that's ultimately going to decide how things in our lives play out. And not just in our lives, but even in politics, or even in wars that's fought, or in all type of different conflicts, or whatever it may be. God is the one that's allowing things to happen either good or bad. Because ultimately, his plan is the only plan that matters. And that's what it's all going to have to come down to. That's what everything is working out to become, what the God wants it to be. That's the only reason things change and different conflicts and things come up, because God is working. And you can see that countless times in the Bible. But we're going to keep going. Let's go to Psalms, the 75th chapter. Psalms, the 75th chapter. Psalm 75. And we're going to start reading here at verse 6. And just pay attention to what the prophet David had to say here, because this is something that we all need to remember when we're recognizing the powers that be around us and the things that they're doing. We got to always keep what the prophet says right here in mind. Psalm 75 and verse 6. When you get there, go ahead.
For promotion cometh neither from the east, nor from the west, nor from the south.
Okay, so he said promotion cometh neither from the east, nor from the west, nor from the south. What does he mean, promotion cometh? That means you're moving up in one way or another. Like, for instance, Biden, for what I understand today, he's the president-elect. So he's been promoted to the top seat in the country. So that's what promotion is. So he says, read that verse again, I'm sorry.
For For promotion cometh neither from the east, nor from the west, nor from the south.
Mm-hmm.
But God is the judge. He putteth down one and setteth up another.
You see that? But God is the judge. He putteth down one and set it up another. See, when you read this and you understand this truly and you take this for what it says at face value, then you don't have to be upset with somebody about who they voted for. You don't have to be upset with somebody about what particular political party they agree with. You know, I'm not one to vote. You know, I'm definitely not no liberal to no extent, because I serve the God of this Bible, and the God of this Bible don't allow liberal activities. But at the end of the day, I don't judge or look down on anybody for their decisions or their beliefs or their particular political party of choice, because I know whatever political party that the Lord needs for his plan and his will to be worked out, that's the one that's going to be in charge. That's the one that's going to come into power. Read that verse again, verse 7.
For God is the judge. He putteth down one and setteth up another.
He putteth down one and set it up another. So if it's time for Trump or whoever else to be sat down and Biden to be promoted, the Lord is doing that. Now all we can do is try to pay attention and see if something that the Lord has showed us in the Bible as far as prophecy, end time prophecy, is going to come from the change of administration. But other than that, you don't really have to get too caught up with it, because the Lord's will is going to be done regardless. And he's going to use men to get it done. He's going to use men to get it done, because that's how he operates. He gives his spirit to the angels, his words to the angels, and they pass it to man, and man acts it out. That's the way it's been going since day one. So he said at verse 7, but God is the judge. He putteth down one and set it up another. Go ahead.
For in the hand of the Lord there is a cup, and the wine is red.
Mm-hmm.
It is full of mixture, and he poureth out of the same, but the dregs thereof. All the wicked of the earth shall wring them out and drink them.
He said, for in the hand of the Lord is a cup, and the wine is red. It is full of mixture, and he poured it out the same. So that's how the Lord is doing his business. He's letting everything spill the way he intends it for it to spill. And then he goes on to say, but the dregs, and you know the dregs is the least of it. That's what the wicked is going to find themselves dealing with. The worst. The worst of God's plan. But ultimately, we came here to show you that God is the one that does promotion, people. He's doing the promotion. He's the one that's setting people up and putting people down. And we're going to read that same instance in another place. Let's go to Daniel, the 2nd chapter. Daniel, the 2nd chapter. Daniel 2. And we're going to read a couple verses here, starting at verse 20. Daniel 2. And we're going to start reading at verse 20. When you get there, my son, go ahead.
Daniel answered and said, blessed be the name of God forever and ever.
Mm-hmm.
For wisdom and might are his, and he changeth the times and his seasons. He removeth kings and setteth up kings.
You see that? He said he changeth times and seasons. He removeth kings and setteth up kings. Who is he talking about? God is the one he's talking about. He said God is the one that's setting up kings and removing kings. See, when you understand that, then you don't have to even feel like, you know, your vote didn't count or your vote did count. Because ultimately, the spirit that made you vote a certain way, the Lord is in control of that too. The Lord is also in control of the things that influence you. You know, we are all products of our environment. So the Lord knows what environment he put you in. He knows what type of mindset that's around you that'll make you lean one way or another. Ultimately, God is the one that's going to stir the spirit of man every time. What verse is that you just read?
Verse 21.
Read it again, please.
And he changeth the times and the seasons. He removeth kings and setteth up kings. He giveth wisdom unto the wise, and knowledge to them that know understanding.
Mm-hmm.
He revealeth the deep and secret things. He knoweth what is in the darkness, and the light dwelleth with him.
He said, not only does he set up kings and remove kings, he said he revealeth the deep and secret things. What does he mean, deep and secret things? That means he ultimately, the beautiful thing about serving the God in his Bible and understanding and studying his Bible is, like I said in the beginning of the lesson, the Bible tells you the end game. See, and the end game to the rest of the world is a secret. See, because the rest of the world is not concerned with the operation of God. So they're not seeking the Lord. They're not seeking his wisdom. They're not doing none of those things. So they don't understand that things are going to play out ultimately one way in the end. See, a million moves can be made on a chessboard, but there's only one checkmate. So when you know what the checkmate is, then you don't have to be overly concerned with what moves was made by each particular person playing the game. Because at the end of the game, you're going to know it's all over. It's all over. So that's what he's letting you know right here. He revealeth the deep and secret things. He knoweth what is in the darkness, and the light dwelleth with him. God knows these things, and he's willing to reveal them to his servants. And we're going to deal with a little bit of it today. I ain't going to be able to get all of it in here, but I'm going to try to get it as much in as I possibly can in the time permitted. But let's go to Acts the 15th chapter and pick up an example from the disciples here. Acts the 15th chapter. Acts the 15th chapter, and when you get there, my son, I want you to start reading at verse 12. Acts 15 and verse 12. And like I said, the title of the lesson again is The Powers That Be, God's Will Be Done. I hope the Facebook live stream is back up and going. I heard it failed once, but we try to get it back up. But it will be posted anyway, so you can get the lesson in its entirety straight through. So we're at Acts, the 15th chapter. And when you get there, my son, start reading at verse 12. Acts 15 and verse 12. When you get there, go ahead.
Then all the multitude kept silent and gave audience to Barnabas and Paul, declaring what miracles and wonders God had wrought among the Gentiles by them. And after that they had held their peace, James answered, saying, Men and brethren, hearken unto me. Simeon hath declared how God at the first did visit the Gentiles to take out of them a people for his name. And to this agree the words of the prophets, as it is written. After this I will return, and will build again the tabernacle of David, which is fallen down, and I will build again the ruins thereof.
Okay, so now they're dealing with some, they're having a little dispute, the apostles, the disciples, they're having a small dispute about, how to handle the Gentiles as far as, circumcision and other things along that nature. And, and they went back to some prophecy because they believed what the prophets were saying. And they understood that the Lord had already prophesied what they was doing at this very moment, even way before it happened. Just like he prophesied about everything that we really need to be concerned with that's going to go on in the world today. God is not leaving you in suspense or obscurity. He's giving you the heads up on what you should be looking out for. So anything other than that, is minimal. It's extremely minimal. So he said right here, he said, verse 15, and to this agree the words of the prophets as it is written, after this I will return and build again the tabernacle of David, which is fallen down. I will rebuild, or I will build again the ruins thereof, and will set it up. So he's prophesying. So the prophet here was prophesying about the temple that Nebuchadnezzar had tore down being rebuilt. And that's exactly what happened. And we're going to read that. What verse is that? Verse 16. Pick it up at 17.
That the residue of men might seek after the Lord, and all the Gentiles upon whom my name is called, saith the Lord, who doeth all these things. Known unto God are all his works from the beginning of the world.
You see that? He said, known unto God are all his works from the beginning of the world. So ain't nothing snuck up on God. Ain't nothing caught God by surprise. So shouldn't nothing catch us by surprise. Shouldn't nothing catch us off guard. Because God's plan is known from the beginning of the world. Just like Jesus, they said the lamb slain from the foundation of the world. It's already been predicted or prophesied of what's going to happen. Just like them being in Jerusalem at this temple that was recently rebuilt by the children of Israel that had left out of captivity was prophesied, and they were just talking about that right here. Let's go to Amos, the 3rd chapter. Because the Lord is going to tell you what you need to know, people. He's going to tell you what you need to know. Amos, the 3rd chapter. Amos, the 3rd chapter. And when you get there, we're going to read one verse here. Because he already let you know that God's works has been from the beginning. Or he's known his works from the beginning. And now see what he's going to do also with that. Let's go to Amos, the 3rd chapter. And just read verse 7. Amos 3 and 7. When you get there, go ahead.
Surely the Lord God will do nothing, but he revealeth his secret unto his servants, the prophets.
See, that's why the disciples were smart enough to take heed to what the prophets were saying. Not to mention that the prophecy had never failed either. You know, no prophecy of God has failed. So when you understand that, you understand to trust in it with all your heart and all your might. Because only a powerful God or a powerful being can tell you the end from the beginning, as we're going to read real soon. So he says, surely the Lord would do nothing, but he revealeth his secret unto his servants, the prophets. So everything that we need to truly be concerned with or truly get caught up with, it's already written. And everything else, like I said, people, is simply details. Who's running the country today? Who's running the country tomorrow? Who's got the most powerful army right now? All that stuff is details. Because as you're going to see plainly from the Bible by the end of this lesson, you're going to know what the end is going to look like. See, God's will be done. And I'm going to leave you with some of the things you should know if I don't leave you with anything else. But let's go to Isaiah, the 41st chapter. Isaiah, the 41st chapter. And let's pay attention to what the Lord had to say here. Isaiah 41. Isaiah 41. And we're going to start reading at verse 1, and then we're going to skip a little bit to save time. Isaiah 41 and verse 1. When you get there, my son, go ahead.
Keep silence before me, O islands, and let the people renew their strength. Let them come near, then let them speak. Let us come near together to judgment.
Mm-hmm.
Who raised up the righteous man from the east, called him to his foot, gave the nations before him, and made him rule over kings. He gave them as the dust to his sword, and as driven stubble to his bow. Okay, so this is the prophet Isaiah right here, giving you some prophecy about what was going to happen. From my understanding, I'm not going to tell you to quote me on this, but I believe this is talking about King Cyrus the Great. Because he is one that I can read that did some of these things, and also he came out of the east as well. And I've checked a couple sources, but don't trust them. But that kind of agree with my way of thinking. But this is something I've always thought was being talked about. I always thought, and he said he raised up the righteous man from the east, called him to his foot, gave the nations before him, and made him rule over kings. He gave them as the dust to his sword and driven stubble to his bow. I've always believed, like I said, that was talking about Cyrus. But, you know, no matter who was talking about, the Lord knows what's going on. But keep going, verse 3. He pursued them and passed safely, even by the way that he had not gone with his feet. Mm-hmm. Who hath wrought and done it, calling the generations from the beginning. I, the Lord, the first, and with the last, I am he. You see what the Lord said right here after he tell you about what he was going to do or what another man was going to do? He said, who have wrought and done it, calling the generations from the beginning. See, God has been calling the generations from the beginning. So once you understand that, then you understand that this is all you need to worry about. Because God is going to give you what you need to know. He said, calling the generations from the beginning, I, the Lord, the first and with the last, I am he. Skip down to verse 17 and keep going. When the poor and needy seek water, and there is none, and their tongue fail for thirst, I, the Lord, will hear them. Mm-hmm. I, the God of Israel, will not forsake them. I will open rivers in high places, and fountains in the midst of the valleys. I will make the wilderness a pool of water, and the dry land spring of water. Mm-hmm. I will plant in the wilderness the cedar, the shittim tree, and the myrtle, and the oil tree. I will set in the desert, the fir tree and the pine, and the box tree together. You see what the Lord talking about? He's talking about end days when he's going to have vegetation growing and stuff all in the desert. But we ain't here for that, but we're going to keep going. Keep going. That they may see and know and consider and understand together that the hands of the Lord have done this, and the Holy One of Israel hath created it. Produce your cause, saith the Lord. bring forth your strong reasons, saith the King of Jacob.
You see that? He said, produce your cause, saith the Lord. Bring forth your strong reasons, said the King of Jacob. What is he talking about, produce your cause? Because everybody feel like they know what's going on. Everybody got their reason. You know, I've heard countless different reasons just about why the election in the United States went the way it went. You know, everybody got a reason. Everybody got an idea, or everybody got an analogy on why things is playing out and what's going to happen in the end. Trump, the abomination of desolation, or I've heard all type of things of people assuming to know what the Lord is doing. See, but when you read this Bible, see, you ain't got to assume. That's why the Lord said He's going to tell you the end from the beginning. So He goes on to tell the people that get caught up in stuff like that. He said, produce your cause, said the Lord. Bring forth your strong reasons, said the King of Jacob. Go ahead.
Let them bring them forth and show us what shall happen.
Let them bring us forth and show us what shall happen. See, if you so smart, everybody's so predictive and can understand what's going to happen in the future, then go on say it. And let's see what happens. Let's see if it plays out the way you say it's going to play out. But I'm going to let you know exactly what's going to happen. It's going to play out the way the Lord says it's going to play out. See, that's how the end is going to come. So He said, let them bring them forth and show us what shall happen. Go ahead.
Let them show the former things, what they what they be, that we may consider them and know the latter end of them, or declare us things for to come.
Or declare us things for to come. See, the only person that can do that is God, people. See, that's why we ain't got to get caught up with trying to predict the future and see what's going to happen later on in our lifetime, or later on in the presidency, or later on in anything. All we got to be concerned with is what the Lord wants us to be concerned with. Because ultimately, He's going to give us what we need. He's not going to leave you perplexed or in obscurity. You're going to know how you're supposed to behave or how you're supposed to respond to any given situation that may arise. So you ain't got to get overly caught up with it. He said at verse 22, let them bring them forth and show us what shall happen. Let them show the former things what they be, that we may consider them and know the latter end of them, or declare us things for to come. See, can't nobody do that but God. See, can't nobody tell you what's going to happen later on tomorrow, later on for the next 4 years. Can't nobody tell you that. Only God can tell you that. Go ahead at verse 24.
Behold, ye are of nothing, and your work of naught. An abomination is he that chooseth you.
You see that? He said, behold, ye are nothing, and your work is of naught. See, if you working trying to manipulate or trying to dictate something going on in the world today, no matter what it may be, or even if you're trying to predict what's going to happen, or you feel as if you have a strong reason, like the Lord is talking about right here, then you're really wasting your time. Because only strong reason or strong belief you should have is what the Lord has given you. You should have none other than that. So He said, behold, ye are of nothing, and your work of naught. An abomination is he that chooseth you. So you're an abomination to those that even take heed to you getting caught up with what's going on that you have no control over or that you can't predict. So was that it right there? Yeah, that was it. Let's go. We're going to stay in Isaiah, but turn over a few pages to Isaiah, the 44th chapter. So the Lord is going to tell you some things by the mouth of the prophets, as He's been doing from the beginning, as He said He will do. And we're just going to pick up a couple of these examples out of the Bible, and we're going to use a couple of biblical references. We're going to use a couple of references, historical references, not to prove what history is saying, but just to prove to you that the Bible is telling you the truth. Let's go to Isaiah, the 44th chapter, and we're going to read one verse here. We're going to read about the same king I mentioned earlier, about King Cyrus, and see what the Lord had said about this king. Now, this is Cyrus the Great, probably one of the greatest kings that ever walked the earth since man has been established. This was a powerful king over the Persian army. Very noted in history. Isaiah 44 and verse 28. When you get there, my son, go ahead.
That saith of Cyrus, he is my shepherd, and shall perform all my pleasure. Even saying to Jerusalem, thou shalt be built, and to the temple, thy foundation shall be laid.
Okay, so this is Cyrus. This is a Gentile king that the prophet is prophesying about. Like I said, see, anything that's of any that matters, the Lord is going to let you know what happened. And what the Lord had Cyrus do in his day, it mattered. It made a difference, a major difference on God's plan, ultimately playing out the way he wanted it to play out. So he said, thus saith of Cyrus, he is my shepherd and shall perform all my pleasure. Even saying to Jerusalem, thou shalt be built, and to the temple, thou foundation shall be laid. So this is something that the Lord had to have happen for his ultimate plan to be worked out. And he used this Gentile king, called them by name, by the way. Now, just to give you a little background knowledge on how previous this was to Cyrus. I believe Cyrus, we're going to read in history, Cyrus was around 500 something BC. But anyway, if you don't understand those dates and times, Isaiah was probably dead before Hezekiah, King Hezekiah. Now, after Hezekiah, King Hezekiah, we had at least 4 more generations of kings after him before we was taken into slavery during the days of Zedekiah. And then, after that, we was in slavery to the Babylonians for a number of years. Then after that, we was in slavery to the Medes for a number of years. Then after that, we was enslaved to the Persians for a number of years. And Cyrus was the king of Persia. He was a Persian ruler. So just imagine the time span in between Isaiah writing this, which had to be previous or prior probably to the death of Hezekiah, king of Judah, all the way, something that's going to happen all the way hundreds of years later during the rule of the Gentile dynasty. Just pay attention how God can tell you the end from the beginning. And not only did he tell you the end from the beginning, he told you the man's name. He told you his name. Thus saith of Cyrus, he is my shepherd and shall perform all my pleasures. Even saying built, and to the even saying to Jerusalem, thou shalt be built, and to the temple thy foundation shall be laid. That's what Cyrus. That was the edict that Cyrus put forth for the children of Israel to leave slavery and go back home and rebuild the temple. And that's what the disciples was talking about when we was reading in Acts, that the temple was going to be rebuilt for them to be able to occupy it during the days of Jesus. And ultimately, the sacrifice being made and the Gentiles being welcomed into the gospel. All these things had to play out. But this is one of the major pieces, or one of the major moves that was made that the Lord gave you the heads up on. See, the Lord's going to give you the heads up on what you need to worry about. I can't read about Trump or Biden in this Bible, so I don't think they do is really going to be very influential to my walk with my Lord. So I don't get overly caught up with that. But things like this is stuff you pay attention to. And I'm going to give you a few more things out of the Bible before we're done that you should pay attention to. So he named this king Cyrus the Great by name. Named him by name. Let's go to 2 Chronicles, the 36th chapter. 2 Chronicles, the 36th chapter. And we're going to skip in time a little bit. Second Chronicles 36. And when you get there, my son, start reading at verse 22. 2 Chronicles 26. Matter of fact, we're going to start reading at verse 21. 2 Chronicles 2 Chronicles 36. And we're going to start reading at 21. Go ahead, my son.
To fulfill the word of the Lord by the mouth of Jeremiah, unto the land had enjoyed her Sabbaths. For as long as she lay desolate, she kept Sabbath to fulfill 70 years. Okay, now this is talking about, I believe this is referring you back to, don't quote me, but I believe it's Jeremiah the 25th chapter. I may be wrong. But
Jeremiah gave you prophecy, just like Isaiah gave you prophecy. And like I said, the Lord's prophecy has never failed. That the children of Israel was going to be ultimately in slavery for 70 years. Now, if you know anything about the prophecy of the 70 weeks of Daniel or things like that, this was not a literal 70 years, but it was more of a prophetical 70 years, 70 weeks of years. But that's another lesson for another time. But I was just reading that to show you that everything that was going on, the Lord had already gave them heads up that it was going to happen. But now we're going to get to verse 22, and go ahead, my son.
Now in the first year of King Cyrus, king of Persia, that the word of the Lord spoken by the mouth of Jeremiah might be accomplished, the Lord stirred up the spirit of Cyrus, king of Persia, that he made a proclamation throughout all his kingdom, and put it also in writing, saying... You see who stirred up the spirit of Cyrus, king of Persia? A Gentile king, Cyrus the Great. It said the Lord stirred up the spirit of Cyrus, king of Persia, that he made a proclamation throughout all his kingdom and put it also in writing, saying, go ahead. Thus saith King Cyrus of Persia, all the kingdoms of the earth hath the Lord God of heaven given me, and he hath changed me to build him an house. He hath charged me to build him an house in Jerusalem, which is in Judah, who is there among you of all his people. The Lord his God be with him, and let him go up. You see that? That's the proclamation that Cyrus was prophesied to make. He was prophesied to do this well before he was even born. He was prophesied by the prophet Isaiah, called by name, to do this. To make this proclamation for the children of Israel to leave slavery and return to their homeland and rebuild Jerusalem and the temple as well. That's what the prophet Isaiah was giving you heads up on. See, but that was very influential to the saving of the world. Because Jesus had to have somewhere to come back to. You know, it was prophesied that Jesus was going to be in Bethlehem, born in Bethlehem, Judea. Well, during these days before Cyrus made this proclamation, wasn't no Jews in Bethlehem, Judea. Because we was all scattered out to slavery ever since the days of Nebuchadnezzar. So at some point we had to return home. So who did God use to send us back home? The most powerful man on the planet. The most powerful man on the planet gave us the okay to return to our homeland so the Lord's will can be done. So the Lord's will and his word can be fulfilled. And if you don't know how great Cyrus is, you can read it in your history books. He was a great ruler, great king. One of the few rulers in the history of rulers that they gave the title of the Great to. There's not too many the greats in history. And he was the first one. So he gave a proclamation originally for us to return to our homeland and rebuild our towns and rebuild the temple. And that's the same temple that Jesus was going to and preaching to the people. But it all started with this proclamation right here. And it was prophesied by the prophet Isaiah well before it happened, showing you that God is in control, even of the Gentile kings. He's in control of everything. He's in control of everything. But we're going to read a little history. We're going to read a passage out of the Reader's Digest Atlas of the Bible, page 148. Page 148, and the title of the passage we reading is called The Return. Like I said, this is the lift up a little bit. This is the Reader's Digest Atlas of the Bible for those who's not familiar with it. It's a good book to pick up if you into studying. But I'm gonna have my son start reading at page 148 where it says The Return, and you can stop right after this paragraph right there, okay? Go ahead. By the middle of the 6th century BC, momentous events were occurring in the Near East, and in the course of these events, the hopes of the survivors and the descendants of Judah to return to Jerusalem were fulfilled. Mm-hmm. The ancient civilizations of Egypt and Mesopotamia had run their magnificent course and were in rapid decline. The last king of Babylon, Nabonidus, introduced religious practices that cost him the allegiance of his subjects. Increasing conflict with the priests in Babylon was one reason why he moved in his royal residence to Tema, an oasis far to the southwest in the Arabian desert. His son, Belshazzar, whose feast is the subject of Daniel 5, ruled as his deputy in Babylon. Moreover, Persian armies, which had taken over the Median Empire and extended it to include all of Asia Minor, were now poised on the Babylonian frontier.
Okay, so this is taking you back to the rule of Nebuchadnezzar's descendants, and the Persians was already making moves. Go ahead.
In late summer of 539, the Persians struck, and in a decisive battle at Opis on the Tigris River, destroyed the Babylonian army. Within weeks, Babylon itself fell without opposition. By command of Persian King Cyrus, the invading troops respected the city's inhabitants and their property. When Cyrus himself entered the conquered city 18 days later, multitudes lined his way and hailed him as deliverer from Nabonidus, a precedent on popular rule.
Okay, so that's commonly known in history. Cyrus the Great, he was not only one of the greatest kings in the history of the Gentile dynasties, but he also, when he took Babylon, he took it without opposition. He had already whooped the army and such, and so when he got to the city, he walked right on in, and the people, for the most part, welcomed him because they didn't like the rulership from what this is saying that they was currently under. Go ahead.
To an anonymous Jewish prophet in exile, this was the hand of the Lord at work, who stirred up one, Cyrus from the east, whom victory meets at every step. I, the Lord. This prophet saw Cyrus as the anointed one to redeem God's chosen people, and they were not disappointed. One of the most enlightened monarchs of antiquity, Cyrus abandoned the Assyrian and Babylonian policies of brutality and deportation of conquered peoples for a program of toleration and restoration. In 538, he issued an edict allowing Jews to return to Yehud, as the Persian province of Judah was called, and to rebuild the Temple of Jerusalem.
Okay, so he did that in 538. 538 BC is when he gave the proclamation that we just read about for the children of Israel to return to, what they call it, Yehud. They had renamed Jerusalem by that. That was a Persian name for it. Did you finish that up?
No.
Go ahead.
And to rebuild the Temple of Jerusalem, as twice reported in the book of Ezra. Ezra chapter 1, 2-4, and chapter 6, 3-5. The edict directed the temple be rebuilt in part with the funds from the royal treasury. Holy vessels taken from the temple by Nebuchadnezzar were to be returned. For the Jews, that's it.
Yeah, that was it right there. So yeah, and we can read all that in the Bible. Not only did Cyrus pay for the return for the children of Israel to go back home, but he returned all the golden vessels and stuff that Nebuchadnezzar took when he sacked Jerusalem the first time. And he allowed them to take all that stuff back. But not only can you read that in the Bible, but you can read that in history. Because like I said, what the Lord has given you has never failed. It has never failed. And it's all going to work out the way the Lord intended to be. No matter who's in power at whatever time. It's going to be the way the Lord intended to be. Let's go back to Daniel, though. Let's go back to Daniel, the 8th chapter. Daniel, the 8th chapter. Daniel, the 8th chapter. We're going to get another example of the Lord telling you the end from the beginning. And it's another great ruler in history. Daniel, the 8th chapter. And when you get there, start reading at verse 15. Daniel 8 and verse 15. When you get there, go ahead.
And it came to pass, when I, even I, Daniel, had seen the vision and sought for the meaning. Then, behold, there stood up before me as the appearance of a man. And I heard a man's voice between the banks of Ulai, which called and said, Gabriel, make this man to understand the vision. Okay, so this is Daniel. Like I said, this is how the Lord gets his words to his prophets or to his servants. He does it through the hands of his angels. So this is Daniel dealing with Gabriel directly, as he had often did, as he was getting prophecy and understanding on what the Lord was going to do in the future. And he said, Daniel's going to make him understand the vision he just had. Keep going from there. So he came near where I stood, and when he came, I was afraid, and fell upon my face. But he said unto me, Understand, O son of man, for at the time of the end shall be the vision.
At the time of the end shall be the vision. Go ahead.
Now as he was speaking with me, I was in a deep sleep on my face toward the ground. But he touched me and set me upright.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, Behold, I will make thee know what shall be in the last end of the indignation, for at the time appointed the end shall be.
Mm-hmm.
The ram which thou sawest having 2 horns are the king of Media and Persia.
Okay, so now we didn't read the vision that he had previous to this, but he had a vision about a ram with 2 horns. And he also had a vision about a he-goat that beat the ram down. And he's finna break down to Daniel, because Daniel was getting visions from God, and he wasn't necessarily understanding what they meant. But every once in a while, the Lord would break it down to Daniel what he was showing him and what it ultimately stood for and what was going to happen in the future. So what verse was that? Go back to verse 19 and start again.
And he said, Behold, I will make thee know what shall be in the last end of the indignation, for at the time appointed the end shall be.
Mm-hmm.
The ram which thou sawest having 2 horns of the king of Media and Persia.
Okay, so he saw a ram. It had 2 horns. One was higher than the other. And that ram with the 2 horns represented the Medo-Persian Empire. And one horn was higher than the other specifically because of Cyrus the Great, because he was more powerful than all the other rulers, and especially all the rulers of the Median Empire. So that's why the Persian Empire went down in history as being the more dominant of the split empire that they kind of ran. So he says right there, he said the ram which thou sawest having 2 horns are the kings of Media and Persia. Go ahead, verse 21.
And the rough goat is the king of Grecia, and the great horn that is between his eyes is the first king.
And it was a rough goat that whooped the ram in the vision. Like I said, you can go back and read the vision early in the chapter. But he said the rough goat is the king of Grecia, and he had 1 great horn between his eyes. And he said the great horn that is between his eyes is the first king. Pay attention, the first king. And if you read the vision, that horn was broken. Keep going, verse 22.
Now that being broken, whereas 4 stood up for it. For a kingdom shall stand up out of the nation, but not in his power.
For a kingdom shall stand up in it. Read that again. I'm sorry, I messed that up.
Now that being broken, whereas 4 stood up for it. For a kingdom shall stand up out of the nation, but not in his power.
Okay, so now the Lord is giving you prophecy about another great empire. And what he called it? The king of Grecia. So it was the Greek Empire. And if you know anything about history, the Greek Empire took rulership of the world from the Persian Empire. Not from Cyrus himself. Cyrus was dead and gone by this time. But one of his later descendants, or not descendants, but one of his later, what's the word we call? Somebody that was ruling after him. That's who Greece ended up taking the empire from and being and ruling it. So that's what the rough goat represented when he was beating on the ram with 2 horns. That the king of Greece was him and his army was gonna whoop on the Medo-Persian Empire and take power. That's what the vision that Daniel had. You can read the vision early in the chapter on your own, but that was the meaning. We skip right down to the interpretation of the vision. And now we're going to read a little bit more. Let's go to the last 2 million years. And we're going to read a couple of passages out of that. This is the last 2 million years. I believe this is another Reader's Digest. Yes, it is. It's also by Reader's Digest. Last 2 million years. Just another history book. You know, I like to validate what we read in the Bible by cross-referencing with history. So we're trying to pick up what we just read here about Grecia, pretty much the first king of Grecia, who's gonna be broken, but he's gonna take out the Medo-Persian Empire. And it said the horn between his eyes is the first king. That horn was broken, and it said 4 kingdoms shall stand up out of that nation, but not in his power. So after the first king is knocked off, Four kings is going to pop up, but they're never going to be as strong as the first king was by itself. So we're going to read a little bit. We're going to go to the last 2 million years, and we're going to read the passage on page 76 first. Page 76, and you're going to, yep, you're right there. Read what we got titled, read that title as well, and read everything up to that point.
War with Greece.
War with Greece. Go ahead.
Darius was the first Persian monarch to style himself King of Kings, Shahanshah, and was considered by his subjects to be master of the world.
Okay, so now they're talking about the Persian Emperor Darius, and he titled himself King of Kings. Go ahead.
But late in his reign, the first warnings of impending disaster sounded on the outskirts of the empire. When the Greek cities in Asia Minor revolted against Persian rule, the Persians crushed the revolt and launched an attack on Athens itself in 490 BC.
Mm-hmm.
But they were defeated by the Greeks at Marathon. In 480, Darius' son, Xerxes, led an immense army against Athens and Sparta. After an initial costly victory over the Spartans at Thermopylae, the Persians were defeated in a naval battle at Salamis near Athens and on land at Plataea. And after these defeats, rebellions broke out throughout the Persian Empire.
Mm-hmm.
Nearly 150 years later, the Persians were no match for the military genius and well-trained cavalry of Alexander the Great, who in 334 led an army of 40,000 men across the Dardanelles and defeated the Persian army at Issus on the Mediterranean coast.
Okay, so now we talk about Alexander the Great. He's another great ruler in history that you can read about in almost every history book. But he was the one that knocked off the Persians and took power. And the Greeks became the world power. They became the world leaders. Just like right now, I guess you could say the United States is the world leaders for now, because empires fall every day. Alexander, who was the king of Greece, conquered the Persian Empire, and he was in charge. Did you finish that?
No.
Keep going.
In 331, Alexander drove into the heartland of the Persian Empire, capturing Babylon, Susa, and finally Persepolis, which he burnt in revenge for the destruction of Athens.
Mm-hmm.
Like so many conquerors of Persia, Alexander quickly succumbed to the Persian way of life and dismayed his generals by wanting to form a Greek-Persian empire on the Achaemenid. That's it.
That's it. Okay, we're going to read a little bit more because we want to pick up some more information. Turn to page 394. We're in the same book. Last 2 million years, Reader's Digest. Page 394 should be a book piece of paper there for you. Try to help you out.
Thank you.
Try to get in front of it for you. And we're going to read what are we going to read here? I'm not sure.
This.
I meant to highlight it for you. Let me see. Let me see. Okay, yeah, we're going to read this right here. This is page 394, and you're going to start reading right there. You can read the title of the passage as well.
Macedonian supremacy.
Mm-hmm.
The Greek city-states were ill-equipped to survive in an era of expanding greater powers. Petty squabbles between them opened the way to conquest by Philip of Macedon, 382-336 BC. The Athenian statesman Demosthenes preached in vain for a united front against Philip's aggressions.
Okay, so Philip the Macedonian, that was the father of Alexander the Great, and he was the one that kind of took power over all Greece. He was the one that brought all the Greek kingdoms together and made Greek one united army, one united people for the most part. Before then, they was tribes fighting each other. Go ahead.
Using their improved fighting formation, the Macedonian phalanx, Philip's spearmen won a victory at Cheronia in 338, which made him a master of Greece.
Mm-hmm.
But soon afterwards, he was assassinated, and his dream of conquest in Asia was left to his son, Alexander, to realize.
Okay, so once he was assassinated, that's when Alexander took took power. Go ahead.
With the military machine he had inherited from his father, Alexander embarked on the invasion of the Persian Empire. In little more than a decade, he swept in triumph through the east from Egypt, where he founded the city of Alexandria in 332, to the threshold of India.
Okay, so Alexander the Great, he took the world by storm, and by 10 years, he was ruling everything. By 10 years, he was ruling everything. Now, I'm going to let my son hold that spot right there, and I'm going to go back to Daniel, where we was reading at. And I'm going to read a little bit out the 9th chapter. You just stay there. I'm going to read this a little bit. And just pay attention, because the way that Alexander took power, it was already predicted by the prophet. It's showing right here, he took power in 10 years flat. He was ruling everything. You know, wars and sieges, they last for decades sometimes. But he did it in 10 years. And he was prophesied to do that. I'm going to read, we back in Daniel 9. And we're going to skip right to it, right to the meat of it. I'm sorry, this is Daniel 8. And I'm going to start reading at verse 4. He said, and I saw a ram pushing westward and northward and southward, so that no beast might stand before him. Neither was there any that could deliver out of his hand. So this ram, we already understand, as we read later in this chapter, is representation of the Medo-Persian Empire. So he was pushing all sides. Like Cyrus was great. He ruled everything he can get his hands on. And it said that none could deliver out his hand, but he did according to his will and became great. This is what the Medo-Persian Empire did. And as I was considering, behold, an he-goat came from the west on the face of the whole earth and touched not the ground, and the goat had a notable horn between his eyes. What do you mean he touched not the ground? It's like he was flying. He was moving quickly. And see, if you pay attention, that's exactly what Alexander did. He did this fast. He took the world by storm at a young age, at a very young age. And it said at verse 6, and he came to the ram that had two horns, which I had seen standing before the river, and ran unto him in the fury of his power. And I saw him cut close unto the ram, and he was moved with choler against him, and smote the ram, and brake his two horns. And there was no power in the ram to stand before him, but he cast him down to the ground and stepped upon him, and there was none that could deliver the ram out of his hand. Therefore the he-goat waxed very great, and when he was strong, the great horn was broken, and for it came up four notable ones toward the four winds of heaven. So he said, right after the he-goat took power and was in charge, that horn was broken. And that's exactly what history is going to tell you about that horn, which we know, we read already, was the first king. And we know that first king was Alexander the Great. Go ahead. What was you at?
Right here.
Go ahead, read that.
With conquest went the spread of Hellenic culture. Alexander died of fever at the age of 33, and his conquests were shared out among his generals, who made separate kingdoms for themselves.
Okay, so he died at 33 years old?
33.
He took power around the time he was 24, was ruling the world before then, and died approximately 10 years later. That's why the book tells you when we was back in, that's the it for that right there. When we go back to Daniel, the 8th chapter, it tells you at verse 21, and the rough goat is the king of Grecia, and the great horn that is between his eyes is the first king. Now that being broken, whereas four stood up for it, four kingdoms shall stand up out of the nation, but not in his power. And what was those four kingdoms? Those four generals, because he had no successor, that took power of the Greek Empire and split it in four sections. Those generals, you can see them in history, was Ptolemy, Cassander, I think Antigonus, and Seleucus. And they're prominent kings in history that split Alexander's empire up into four different sections. But by doing that, they was never as powerful as him, because he controlled it all as one. So what the Bible is telling us ultimately came to pass exactly the way the Bible told us it was going to happen. See, when you understand that the Bible has prophecy that's going to give you heads up on anything that you need to be aware of, then you won't get caught up with the petty squabbles of the politics of the day, or the politics of another nation, or the wars that's going on today, because you know the end game. You know the end game. Let's go to Luke the 21st chapter. We're going to pick up some of this end game. Luke the 21st chapter. Luke the 21st chapter. Because like I said, if I don't leave you with nothing else, then I'm going to leave you with some things that you should know that's going to happen in the end, so you'll know a little bit of what to be looking out for and what to pay attention to. Because your salvation is definitely going to depend on it. Luke the 21st chapter. And when you get there, my son, start reading at verse 5. Luke 21 and verse 5. When you get there, go ahead.
And as they were afraid and bowed down their faces to the earth, they said unto them, Why seek ye the living among the dead?
I said Luke 21. Oh. That's a good verse. It's not the one we want. Luke 21 and verse 5. When you get there, go ahead.
And as some spake of the temple, how it was adorned with goodly stones and gifts, he said, As for these things which ye behold, the days will come, in the which there shall not be left one stone upon another, that shall not be thrown down. You
see that? Okay, so now Jesus is in Jerusalem at this time with the disciples, and he's walking, and they was talking about the temple and how glorious it was and how beautiful it was. And this is the same temple that Cyrus gave the edict to go back and rebuild during his days. Well, it was still standing in the days of Jesus. And while they was talking about it, Jesus let them know. He was like, man, ain't none of this going to be here. None of this going to be here. And ain't none of it there to this day. So Jesus wasn't lying. See, because the Lord can tell you the end from the beginning. He said, there's not going to be one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down. And that's exactly what happened. Go ahead.
And they asked him, saying, Master, but when shall these things be? And what signs will be there when these things shall come to pass? And he said, Take heed that ye be not deceived. For many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ, and the time draweth near. Go ye not therefore after them.
So first thing he tells them, they asked him when this stuff was going to happen. Because he just gave them some game on what was going to happen to the temple. They're like, when is going to happen? And when you going to come back? So he's going to answer both those questions. So first thing he says, though, is take heed that ye be not deceived. For many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ, and the time draweth near. Go ye not therefore after them. Go ahead.
Then said he unto them, Nation shall rise against...
But you at verse 9.
But when ye shall hear of wars and commotions, be not terrified. For these things must first come to pass, but then the end is not by and by.
The end is not by and by, so it's not right around the corner. Go ahead.
Then said he unto them, Nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. And great earthquakes shall be in divers places, and famines and pestilences, and fearful sights and great signs shall there be from heaven.
Okay, so he's telling about the end days right here. He's telling about how the sun and the moon gonna go dark. This is all end day prophecy we can read about. We can read about all these things. But then he's gonna bring it back to their day a little bit, because he started talking about this temple. So go ahead to verse 12 and keep going.
But before all these, they shall lay their hands on you and persecute you, delivering you up to the synagogues and into prisons, being brought before kings and rulers for my name's sake.
Okay, so before all that end time prophecy happening, he said, but before all these, they shall lay their hands on you and persecute you. Who is he talking to? He's talking to Peter and the disciples. Because they came to him privately and asked him this question. He said, but they shall lay their hands on you and persecute you, delivering you up to synagogues and into prisons, being brought before kings and rulers for my name's sake. And all these things happened to his disciples. Go ahead.
Settle it therefore in your hearts.
You at verse 13.
And it shall turn to you for a testimony. Settle it therefore in your hearts, not to meditate before what ye shall answer. For I will give you a mouth and wisdom, which all your adversaries shall not be able to gainsay nor resist. And ye shall be betrayed both by parents and brethren, and kinsfolks and friends, and some of you shall they cause to be put to death.
And some of them was put to death. I think John was put to death, Stephen was put to death, countless other disciples was put to death at one time or another. Go ahead.
And ye shall be hated of all men for my name's sake. But there shall not an hair of your head perish, and your patience possess ye your souls. And when ye shall see Jerusalem compassed with armies, then know that the desolation thereof is nigh.
He said, then when you should see Jerusalem compassed with armies, then know that the desolation therefore is nigh. Because he was talking about that temple being thrown down and not one stone being upon another. And the army was going to come and do that. See, that's what that's what was ultimately going to happen. That's how it was going to happen. It wasn't going to be no earthquake. It was going to be armies. Go ahead.
Then let them which are in Judea flee to the mountains, and let them which are in the midst of it depart out, and let not them that are in the countries enter therein too. For these be the days of vengeance, that all things which are written may be fulfilled. But woe unto them that are with child, and to them that give suck, and in those days, for there shall be great distress in the land, and wrath upon this people. And they shall fall by the edge of the sword, and they shall be led away captive into all nations. And Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles, until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled.
Okay, so that's all that was gonna happen. He's letting you know when that temple was gonna fall, Jerusalem was gonna be compassed about with armies. They was gonna come in there and kill up half the people, and they was gonna send the people, the children of Israel, into slavery all over the world. All over the world. And that's exactly what happened. And he said we was going to be in slavery until the time of the Gentiles be fulfilled. Now let's go see if what Jesus said came true. Let's go back to the last 2 million years. But this time we're going to turn to page 87. See, when you know the end game or you know the very important acts that's going to play out in history, then you won't get caught up with the minor ones. The stuff that's going on today with these presidents, that's minor. That's minor in the big scheme of things. Because the Lord is going to give you anything major you need to know. Ain't nothing going to sneak up on you when you trust God and study his word. 10 years, and we're going to start reading that verse, or page 87. And just read what I got highlighted in yellow right over there, starting at the title.
Faith survives the dispersion.
Faith survives the dispersion. Because we was going to be dispersed. Go ahead.
The crucifixion of Jesus about AD 30 did not end Jewish resistance to the Roman occupation. In 70, when the country was again in a state of revolt, Jerusalem, the holy city, became the core of the resistance to the Romans. Titus, the son of Emperor Vespasian, proceeded to lay siege to Jerusalem. The city fell and the inhabitants were enslaved in their thousands and dispersed throughout the Mediterranean world.
Ain't that what Jesus said was going to happen? He said that temple was going to be destroyed and y'all was going to be taken into slavery and dispersed. That's exactly what Jesus said was going to happen. And that's exactly what happened, according to history. So what the Lord told you was spot on. As always, it was spot on. See, when the Lord giving you information that you need to know, you ain't got to get caught up with extra details. You don't have to get caught up with extra details. Because the powers that be is ultimately going to work out everything in the Lord's favor anyway. Anyway, read that again. I'm sorry.
This was the first dispersion, and worse was to follow. Continual insurrections and revolts against Roman rule led to the total destruction of Jerusalem in 135. The city was renamed Aelia Capitolina, and all Jews were prohibited from entering it.
And we ain't been back since. We ain't been back since. We was prohibited by the Roman rulers not to go back to our city after we was forcefully removed and dispersed into slavery into all nations. But ain't that what Jesus said was going to happen? Let's go back to St. Luke, the 21st chapter. And we're going to read that again to make sure Jesus didn't lead us wrong. Start reading at verse 24.
And they shall fall by the edge of the sword, and shall be led away captive into all nations. And Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled.
And that's exactly what's happening. And we still in the time in the Gentiles. We still in the time of Gentile dynasties, Gentile rulerships. So we are not going to be allowed back in our land until that time comes to an end. But who gave you that bit of information? None other but God Almighty. See, anything you need to know, God is going to tell you. All you got to do is trust, believe, and search his word. And take it for what it say. Don't let nobody tell you what it means. Take it for what it say, because this Bible is plain, people. This Bible is plain. A fifth grader can understand this. But let's keep going. Let's go to Let's go to Matthew, the 24th chapter. Because we're going to get some information from the Bible that quite hasn't came to pass yet. See, and this is why, because I got understanding of things like this, I ain't overly concerned with what the president is doing. Yeah, I watch the news, I watch the TV, it's been on my TV, rolling count, CNN, I've been watching the station just like everybody else. But I'm not overly bent out of shape either way. I don't feel personally about what's going on because honestly, I know what's going to happen. I'm just hoping the Lord allow me to be found worthy to be in his good graces when he started doing these things. Matthew, the 24th chapter. And when you get there, my son, start reading that verse 13. Matthew 24 and verse 13. When you get there, go ahead.
But he that shall endure unto the end, the same shall be saved.
Mm-hmm.
And this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations, and then shall the end come.
See, that's why we got people like me and all type of other countless people going to some of these biblical Christian churches preaching the word, because the Lord said this was going to happen. Like right now, I'm on the internet, I'm on 2 different cameras, and the word is going out. And countless other people, friends of mine, is doing the same exact thing I'm doing because this word is going to come out. It's going to be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations, and then show the end come. See, the word wasn't preached to all the world previously to maybe a decade or so before technology then took off, and now I can access somebody in China or Ghana or Somalia just by the click of a button right now. See, it wasn't always that way. So you can see how the Lord was going to let his will be done even through technology. Because we'd have had a hard time trying to preach somebody the gospel in England through Morse code. So now that technology done caught up, this gospel can be preached throughout the whole world. This gospel can be spread from one nation to another quite easily. Not just by word of mouth, but just by the click of a button. By a simple phone call, an email, a text, a live stream, a YouTube page. And this word is going out. But this is something that the Lord said was going to happen. So he said, and this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations, and then shall the end come. Verse 15, keep going.
When ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet stand in the holy place, whoso readeth, let him understand.
Okay, so now Jesus is giving you some information about the end, and he's telling you about a great act that's going to happen in. See, this is the stuff you should be worried about. Read verse 15 again.
When ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet stand in the holy place, whoso readeth, let him understand.
He said, whoso readeth, let him understand. Understand what? About this abomination of desolation. This is a man that Daniel the prophet prophesied about. And what did we read in Amos the 3rd chapter? Surely God would do nothing unless he revealed his secrets unto his prophets. So not only did Jesus tell you who to look out for, but he referred you back to the prophet that previously told you about it, which was none other than Daniel. Keep going, verse 16.
Then let them which be in Judea flee into the mountains. Let him which is on the housetop not come down to take anything out of his house.
So this is the time to get moving, pretty much. This ain't the time to fight. This is the time to run. Jesus is warning you to run. So if somebody's telling you to stand firm and stand your ground when you see this happen, don't you be foolish. You do what Jesus say do. He tell you to get out the way because this is going to be a hard time for the children of Israel or any servant of the Most High God. But we're going to go back, since he referred us back to Daniel, we're going to go back to Daniel and get it out of the horse's mouth. We're going to go to Daniel the 12th chapter. Daniel the 12th chapter. Because if Jesus referred you back to Daniel, the least you can do is read it, right? Daniel the 12th chapter. It's like we read in Amos, surely the Lord will do nothing unless he revealed his secret unto his prophets. Just like he told us about Alexander the Great and how those dynasties was going to fall and rise. The same thing with Cyrus. He told us about how the end was going to happen and what you need to be prepared for and what you need to be building up against. Daniel, the 12th chapter. And when you get there, my son, start reading that verse 9. Because Daniel got this vision. And as always, it made no sense to Daniel. It made absolutely no sense to Daniel at all. So he's just giving us information for our days. So when the angel tell him what he tell him, you understand why. Daniel 12 and verse 9. What did the angel Gabriel say to him?
And he said, "Go thy way, Daniel, for the words are closed up and sealed to the end of the time of the end."
He said the words are closed up and sealed to the time of the end. See, what some of the stuff Daniel was writing, it wasn't even for him. It wasn't even for him to understand. Yeah, the Lord gave him some information on some of the things, but in some of the things, the Lord was like, "Man, this is way past you. You're gonna be dead and gone. Don't even fret yourself with this. Just write it down like I'm telling you. And in the end days, they gonna get it. And that's why we know we're in end days, because guess what? We get it. It makes perfect sense to us. Perfect sense. Read that again. I'm sorry, verse 9.
And he said, "Go thy way, Daniel, for the words are closed up and sealed to the time of the end. Many shall be purified and made white and tried, but the wicked shall do wickedly, and none of the wicked shall understand, but the wise shall understand."
But the wise shall understand. See, the wise is the ones that's trusting in the Lord and trusting in his word. See, we gonna know what's going on when the abomination that maketh desolate takes power and takes rule over this world. We gonna understand and we gonna see it coming. Because we was forewarned by God. God is gonna give you the warning you need. And trust me, ain't nothing happened recently that you need to be overly concerned with. Because if it was, you would be able to read it. This is just another, what they say, another motion that has to go through for ultimately all this to come and play out. Go ahead, where you at?
Verse 11.
Go ahead.
"And from the time that the daily sacrifice shall be taken away, and the abomination that maketh desolate set up, there shall be 1,290 days."
Okay, so he not only did Daniel tell you about the abomination that maketh desolate, he told you how long he's going to be in play. And he said 1,290 days. That's 3.5 years. That's 3.5 years. And he's going to be set up. Where is he going to be set up? Jesus let you know where he was going to be set up. He told you, stand in the holy place. That's where he was going to be. But let's try to figure out who this abomination that maketh desolate truly is. Let's go back up to Daniel, the 8th chapter. Daniel, the 8th chapter. Or let's get, not necessarily see who he is right here, but we're going to get some more information about him so you'll be able to readily identify him. I can tell you who he is right now. This is the Pope of this day. Probably not the Pope of today, but the Pope of this day. This is who it's talking about. And the Bible is going to show you that before we finish today. Daniel, the 8th chapter, and start reading at verse 23. Daniel 8 and 23. When you get there, go ahead.
"And in the latter time of their kingdom, when the transgressors are come to the full, a king of fierce countenance and understanding dark sentences shall stand up.
Mm-hmm.
And his power shall be mighty, but not by his own power. And he shall destroy wonderfully, and shall prosper and practice, and shall destroy the mighty and the holy people.
This is what he gonna do. Go ahead.
And through his policy, also he shall cause craft to prosper in his hand."
So he's not only gonna be able to take people by force and physically whoop on you, but he's gonna have forms of witchcraft. That's what craft is. He's gonna be able to do miraculous things that you have never seen nobody do before. And that's going to catch the world by surprise. See, but the Lord is warning you, don't you be fooled by that. Don't you be fooled by that. That's why Jesus wrote, "Him who read it, let him understand." Because if you don't know, if you ain't watching and praying, this might sneak up on you. And while you sitting there worrying about Trump, you're going to wake up one day with a mark on your hand, wondering why you ain't going to make it into the kingdom. Because this is what you need to be concerned with. Read verse 25 again. Start at verse 25.
"And through his policy also he shall cause craft to prosper in his hand, and he shall magnify himself in his heart, and by peace shall destroy many. He shall also stand up against the prince of princes, but he shall be broken without hand."
So he's not only is he going to be whooping on the holy people of God, he's going to take it upon himself to try to fight God. That's the prince of princes. He's going to try to fight the true and living God, because the true and living God is going to come during his reign. This is when Jesus is going to make his second coming. Now, he the Prince of Princes. But he said, but he should be broken without hand. Go ahead.
And the vision of the evening and the morning, which was told, is true. Wherefore, shut thou up the vision, for it shall be for many days.
He's telling Daniel again, this ain't for you. You giving game to future generations, Daniel. Write it down and shut it up. Go ahead.
And I, Daniel, fainted and was sick certain days. Afterward, I rose up and did the king's business. And I was astonished at the vision, but none understood it.
But none understood it, because it wasn't for Daniel to understand. But he stayed telling you about this man that was going to stand in the holy place, who Jesus said Daniel called the abomination that make him desolate. This is a man that's going to come to power in our days. Hopefully in our days, at least. That we need to be on the lookout for. And we need to make sure that we don't find ourselves in line with, because he's going to look the part of a man of God. He's going to talk the part of a man of God, but he ain't a man of God. He is not a man of God. That's why Jesus said, whoso readeth, let him understand. Paul gave some more information about him. Let's go to 2 Thessalonians, the 2nd chapter. See, the Lord is going to tell you what you need to know. See, that's why I ain't too overly concerned what these Gentile rulers doing now. Because I know the Gentile who I need to be looking out for. I know that. 2 Thessalonians, the 2nd chapter. And when you get there, start reading that verse 1. 2 Thessalonians 2 and verse 1. And Paul gives you some more information. See, this is what you need to be concerned with. This is what you need to be focused on. 2 Thessalonians 2 and verse 1. When you get there, go ahead.
Now we beseech you, brethren, by the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ, and by our gathering together unto him.
So we talking about the coming of Christ again. Because remember, I just said, we just read that he's going to, the abomination that make him desolate is going to try to fight the Prince of Princes and going to be beat. He's going to be broken without hand. So obviously, this is going to be going on in the end days right before Jesus make his second coming. So that's why Paul is taking you to the second coming of Christ right here. Because it's talking about the same time that Daniel was talking about. Even though Daniel didn't understand it, he was talking about something way after him. Because the Lord is going to give you the end from the beginning. It's his will that's going to be done. And the powers that be is ultimately going to work out his will the way he wanted to work out. Read that verse 1 again. I'm sorry.
Now we beseech you, brethren, by the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ, and by our gathering together unto him, that ye be not soon shaken in mind, or be troubled, neither by spirit, nor by word, nor by letter, as from us, as that the day of Christ is at hand.
Because the day of Christ can only come at a certain time. He can't come any day. Go ahead.
Let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come, except there come a falling away first, and that man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition.
There go that man of sin. This the same, he talking about the same man that Daniel was talking about that Jesus referred you to. That man of sin must be revealed, the son of perdition. Go ahead.
Who opposeth and exalteth himself above all that is called God, or that is worshipped, so that he, as God, sitteth in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God.
That's why Jesus said he was going to move to the holy place. He's going to move to the holy place. What is the holy place? None other than Jerusalem, people. None other than Jerusalem. And I already gave you a little game already. This is the Pope of this day. Whatever day this is, it may not be this one, but it is the Pope of this day. He's going to ultimately find himself ruling everything for the most part. Because the Lord gave us the information already of how the world was going to come to an end, people. See, that's why we ain't got to be worried about Trump or Biden. They ain't bringing the world to an end. This man is going to bring the world to an end. He's going to close out mankind or man's civilization as we know it. He's going to close the door on that chapter. He's going to be the end of the time of the Gentiles. So he said right here, who opposes and exalted, he said at verse 4, who opposes and exalted himself above all that is called God or that is worship. And you can kind of see that playing out right now, too. I was just reading something recently. The Pope, for the first time, I think, ever, just okayed homosexuality. Oh, yeah, come on now. You know how many people the Catholics have crucified and cut off body parts in history for homosexuality? Now this Pope, this New Age Pope, is okay with it. So you see that things are starting to turn in the direction of he's finna start doing some unorthodox things. That office is finna start acting very unusual because they changing. So he said at verse 4, who opposed him and exalted himself above all that is called God or that is worshipped, so that he as God sitteth in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. He's going to portray himself as God when the time comes. The title already represents the replacement of Christ, but he's going to take it to the next level at one time. And he's going to just go on and say he it. And because he's going to be able to make craft prosper and going to be able to make statues walk and talk and stuff like that, people going to go for it. But God is warning you. Jesus warned you. Let him who readeth. You better understand that. Get some understanding about that. Go ahead. Verse 5.
Remember ye not that when I was yet with you, I told you these things.
Even Paul telling you better remember this. Like I told you this before, you better remember it. Go ahead.
And now you know what withholdeth that he might be revealed in his time. For the mystery of iniquity doth already work. Only he who now letteth will let until he be taken out of the way, and then shall the wicked be revealed.
And then shall the wicked be revealed. Go ahead.
And whom the Lord shall consume with the spirit of his mouth, and shall destroy with the brightness of his coming.
Okay, and that's going to be none other than Jesus. That's where it said that Daniel said he's going to try to fight the prince of princes, but he's going to be broken without hand. Only God's going to be able to take him out. Go ahead.
Even him whose coming is after the working of Satan, with all power and signs and lying wonders.
With all power, signs, and lying wonders. See, he's going to be able to do some spectacular things, people. That's why he's going to catch the world off guard. See, because the world worried about what's going on right now and how that's going to play out. See, you need to be concerned with how this thing is going to ultimately end. Because God gave you the end. Go ahead.
And with all deceivableness of unrighteousness in them that perish, because they receive not the love of the truth, that they might be saved.
You see that? And they gonna perish because they are deceived by the miracles and the things that he's doing. And what do I mean perish? I'm going to show you what I mean perish later on. Go ahead, keep going.
And for this cause, God shall send them strong delusion, that they should believe a lie.
They gonna believe a lie. And it's going to be their downfall. They're going to believe this man is righteous and pious. They're going to believe he is the way. They're going to believe he is God. And it's going to be to their own detriment. Because they're not worried about the operation that God has set forth and what he told you was going to happen. They're not concerned with his holy scriptures. They're not concerned with the words of his prophets. They're not concerned with the words of his apostles and his disciples. They're more concerned with what's going on in the world today and what they can see with their own eyes. And what they want to believe with their own mind. That's dangerous. That is very dangerous. You need to be concerned with what the Lord is trying to give you so you know how to save yourself from yourself. So he said, and for this cause God shall send them strong delusions that they shall believe a lie. Go ahead.
That they all might be damned.
That they all might be damned. What does damn mean? That's just another word of condemned. Read that verse again. I'm sorry.
That they all might be damned who believe not the truth, but have pleasure in unrighteousness.
They are damning themselves. They are damning themselves for not being concerned with what we know is going to happen. See, like I said, no matter what the powers that be are doing, God's will is going to be played out. And as long as you focus on that, you can save yourself in the end. Let's go to Revelation the 13th chapter. Let's go to Revelation the 13th chapter. We're going to pick up some more information because this is what you need to know. You ain't going to say I ain't tell you what you need to know. Take it and do with it what you want to do with it. But this is what you need to be concerned with. This the powers that be that you need to be looking out for. You ain't got to worry about old Biden. Like I was talking to my lady today, we'd be lucky if he make it out of 2021. old as he is. You ain't got to worry about him. You got to worry about this. Because this is going to dictate whether or not you make it into the kingdom of heaven or you find yourself floating with Satan in that lake of fire. Revelation, the 13th chapter. And when you get there, start reading at verse 11. Revelation 13 and verse 11. When you get there, go ahead.
And I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon. And he exercises all the power of the first beast before him, and causeth the earth, and them which dwell therein, to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed.
Let's talk about none other than the Roman Empire, which ain't nothing but the European common market revival of Roman Empire. Only way you can be a part of it is if you sign the Treaty of Rome. But that's for another time. But go ahead, keep going.
And he doeth great wonders, so that he maketh fire come down from heaven on the earth and in the sight of men.
This is what this man is going to be able to do. We still reading about the abomination that maketh desolate right here, people. The Pope of this day. He's going to be able to make fire come down out of heaven in the sight of men. What did he say? He said he was going to be able to do lying wonders and miracles and stuff, right? See, if you're going to get caught up, a lot of people going to see this and be like, oh, man. That gotta be the power of God. Nah, that's the power of Satan, and you better run from it. You better run from it. Jesus told you to run when he posted up in Jerusalem. He told you don't even go back in your house. He told you to flee to the wilderness because you don't want no parts of this. You don't want no parts of this. So he said, verse 13, and he doeth great wonders so that he maketh fire come down from heaven on the earth in sight of men. Go ahead.
And deceiveth them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell on the earth, that they should make an image to the beast, which hath the wound by his sword and did live. And he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed.
So he's going to be able to bring this statue to life for them. That's what an image is. He's going to be able to bring this, whatever it is, to life, and it's going to be able to talk and move. It's going to be able to look like it's going to be able to kill people. The world is going to be taken off guard by this because they're not concerned with the operation of God. They're not concerned what God got going on. They think what's going on in politics today is important. They think what's going on in politics tomorrow is going to be important. No, this is what you need to be concerned with. This is the only politics you need to be concerned with when this happens. So he said he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, and that the image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. Go ahead, verse 16.
And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads.
And this is where you better be careful. Everybody is going to have to take this mark. Everybody under the rulership of this empire is going to be required to take this mark. And it's either going to be in their right hand or in their foreheads. Now, I can't tell you exactly what this mark is going to be, but I can tell you what it's going to represent. And it's going to represent the man of sin, the son of perdition, the abomination that maketh desolate. That's what it's going to be in representation of. So you be leery about taking any mark later on in end days when you see all these things coming to pass. Go ahead. Verse 17. What else about the mark?
And that no man might buy or sell, save he had that mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name.
So you're going to need this mark just to even be able to survive. You're going to need this mark to be able to buy food and sell things and provide for your family. You're not going to be able to do nothing without it. That's what he's telling you right here. He's going to have the world in a chokehold for the most part. And you're going to have to bow down to it to survive. Or you're going to have to do what the Lord warned you to do and flee to the wilderness and hope that he provides for you out there. And go ahead, verse 18. Pay attention to this.
Here is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast.
Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast. Go ahead.
For it is the number of a man, and his number is 666.
666. And for anybody that don't understand or is new to the channel or new to the Bible, studying the Bible, Vicarious Filii Dei, the Roman Pope's proper title in Latin, if you add up all the Roman numerals in that title, Vicarious Filii Dei, it equals 666. That's why he said it's the number of a man. It's the number of that office. That's why I said it's going to be the Pope of this day. He's going to be the abomination that maketh desolate. He's going to be the one that's going to take power through the newly revived Roman Empire, which we know to be the European common market right now. See, that's why I ain't overly caught up with the United States, because I know the United States got to take a back seat regardless. See, Rome going to have to stand up and be the world power one day. So in one form or another, this stuff over here got to decline. And you see it declining rapidly right before your eyes. But this is the mark that we all need to be making sure we never take it. And I'm going to show you why you better not never take it. Let's go to Revelation, the 19th chapter. Revelation, the 19th chapter. Revelation, the 19th chapter. And we're going to start reading at verse 19. Revelation, and we're talking about the same individuals all over the Bible. See, because God ain't going to leave you in obscurity. He's not going to leave you not knowing. Revelation 19 and verse 19. When you get there, go ahead.
And I saw the beasts and the kings of the earth and their armies gathered together to make war against him that sat on the horse and against his army.
So they're trying to fight God, pretty much. Go ahead.
And the beast was taken, and with him the false prophet that wrought miracles before him, with which he deceived them, that he received the mark of the beast, and them that worshipped his image. These both were cast alive into the lake of fire, burning with brimstone. Okay, so now Jesus is going to make his second coming, and he's going to instantly, first rule of business, he's going to take out the beast. That's going to be the military leader of the Roman Empire, the newly revived Roman Empire, and he's going to take out the false prophet, and he's going to throw them into the lake of fire. And he's going to go and get them out the way. He's going to change them, throw them in there. They're going to beat Satan to the lake. That's very unfortunate, but it is what it is. Back up to the 14th chapter of Revelations. Because he had a lot of people following him. Remember, he deceived the entire earth pretty much. Had everybody taking his mark. Revelation 14, and when you get there, start reading that verse 9. Revelation 14 and verse 9. When you get there, go ahead. And the third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, If any man worship the beast in his image, and receive his mark in his forehead or in his hand, the same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of God.
The same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of God. So God ain't going to want to hear, oh, I had to take the mark to feed my babies. You should have watched them starve. Or I had to take the mark, or I was going to lose my house. You should have slept in a box. There's not going to be no excuse for this. See, this is what you need to be worried about. There's no way out of this. There's no coming back from this. If you allow yourself to be fooled by what you really should be looking out for. So he said right here, he said, and the third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, if any man worship the beast and his image, and receive his mark in his forehead or in his hand, verse 10,
the same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of God, which is poured out with mixture into the cup of his indignation. And ye shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb.
And so you're going to find yourself going to the lake of fire. That is a guarantee. That is a guarantee. So don't you be fooled by this man or by these things that's going to be going on in the last days. And this is what you put your faith in, and this is what you look out for. Because this is the only politics and policies that the Lord is telling you that's really going to matter when it all comes down to it. So he said, read verse 11. What else is going to be the case?
And the smoke of their torment has ascended up forever and ever.
And the smoke of their torment ascended up forever and ever. There's no way out of the lake of fire once you're in that, people. Read that verse again. I'm sorry.
And the smoke of their torment ascendeth up forever and ever. And they have no rest, day nor night, who worship the beast and his image, and whosoever receiveth the mark of his name.
And whosoever receiveth the mark of his name, you're going to burn forever and ever. No rest. You're just dealing with it. Keep going.
Here is the patience of the saints. Here are they that keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus.
You got to keep the commandments. You got to keep faith on what Jesus is telling you in this Bible. Don't worry about what's going on in the world today. You worry about what you need to be looking for in the future. Because these things going on, they're going to pass. These just hiccups along the road. But the ultimate plan, the Lord's will, is ultimately going to be played out the way he wants to be played out. And he's going to give his servant the mind and the heads up to know what to avoid and what to look out for. Let's go to one more place. Philippians, the 2nd chapter, and this will be it. Philippians 2, and this will be it right here. Philippians, the 2nd chapter. And when you get there, start reading at verse 12. Philippians 2 and verse 12. When you get there, go ahead.
Wherefore, my beloved, as ye have always obeyed, not as in my presence only, but now much more in my absence, work out your own salvation with fear and trembling. For it is God which worketh in you both to will and to do of his good pleasure.
For it is God which is worketh in you both to will and to do his good pleasure. So God's working in each and every one of us, people. Not just the kings of the earth, not just the rulers that we see every day, but we ultimately all are part of God's plan in one way or another. All we can do is make ourselves available and make ourselves usable for God to do the right thing, or you're going to find yourself being used like Judas to do the wrong thing. And that is the powers that be. God's will be done. Hope you got some understanding in the name of Jesus. Till next time, peace.